NextGen Economy Podcast, Accelerating Breakthroughs.
This podcast is brought to you by ExO Economy, transforming the world economy for a better future.
This podcast is brought to you by FutureMike, imagining and building places worth living for.
Hi, this is Angela Faye. I am super excited to introduce you to and welcome the future thinkers, Yuvi Ivanova and Mike Gilliland from British Columbia, Canada. We are starting the conversation and giving you some information and expertise on NFTs and really the future of digital currencies, what that means for us as entrepreneurs. But first of all, welcome, Mike and Yuvi. Tell me us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure.
I think Mike's entrepreneurial journey started before me. He's been doing it since he was 18. I started a little later in my 20s, and then we met about 10 years ago, took off traveling right away, and started building online businesses of all kinds. We've done media editing, web design, search engine optimization, marketing, building digital products. And then in 2013, we started our podcast, Future Thinkers, because we were traveling and our schedule was very flexible and we had lots of stories to tell and had lots of time to read books and philosophize about life. So we started recording our morning conversations, publishing them, and over time it grew.
The exploration when we started traveling inspired a lot of new directions in our entrepreneurial life and our personal life. And one thing we started paying a lot more attention to was culture and economies and technologies and psychology and sociology and how they all blend together. Mm-hmm. And the podcast actually has been about addressing existential problems on the planet, and not just wallowing in the pity and despair of the planet falling apart, but really, what are the solutions? What can we actually do? And how can we get people involved at a grassroots level? And it just kept making itself evident to us over and over again for the last probably 10 years or more that redesigning how we live in society is that key base level of change. And so it starts with the village. So rethinking how we build and relate to each other within villages.
So the NFT thing, how that comes into here is that currency is part of the structure of how we live, because currency makes us act in certain, and currency design is really important. So we've been involved in the blockchain space for a long time. I think we bought some Bitcoin in 2013 or 14 initially, but recently the NFT space has become this new sort of invention in the crypto blockchain space. NFT stands for Non-Fungible Token. And so the difference here is that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum are fungible, which means one is indistinguishable from another. You can swap the two, it doesn't matter. Same as dollars. You give me $1, I give you $1 back, there's no difference. But NFTs, they're non-fungible, which means each one is somehow unique, like people. Each one has its own unique properties and they're not interchangeable. It presents a whole array of new options. And the thing is that NFTs specifically, they are blockchain objects. So they are programmable. You can verify who owns it, and it's transparent. You can check on the blockchain, and you can verify its rarity. It would be very hard to forge a fake one. So that presents a whole, array of things you can do with them. You can use identity proof. You can use them as tickets. You can use them as IOUs for services that are verified. Like you can sell, for example, some specific type of wine with it that it's verified by this producer. There are just so many use cases for it.
Question about the evolution of the concept of NFT. Suddenly it's everywhere in the news, right? Because there's a couple of big digital products that sold for multi-million dollars. My question is, what differentiates an NFT from, say, a label on a wine, as you suggested, or verifying its source, or a physical piece of artwork or a physical product? What is the difference between those physical things in the world and an NFT specifically?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really the key trait of blockchains. It's that you've made something that was up until recently copyable easily transmittable. You could pirate things, and suddenly you've made a rare digital asset. So it's verifiably rare, unique, and it's still just as transferable, just as liquid, just as fast to move as any other digital asset. But now it's verifiably unique.
And you can verify that it was produced by this specific artist.
Could you give me an example of different sectors that could use NFTs?
NFTs are incredibly versatile. I think that they are going to be revolutionary for creators and entrepreneurs of all kinds. I actually don't think that there's any industry limitations. The limitation is your own creative imagination, really. It's such a versatile technology that anybody could use it. It's great for any kind of limited edition runs of anything. That would be the most obvious application. But then you could also use it for tickets. Again, limited edition tickets, provable that it was from this specific event, and then people could keep it as memorabilia as well. So it could even have some value on secondary markets after it's been used. And then you can program things into them. So you can build in royalties, for example. So anytime that it sells on the secondary market, the initial creator gets paid. So it's great for musicians and artists, but anybody as well. Like I said, winemakers or shoemakers or any maker of any kind.
Just looking at the ticket idea, how would a person actually acquire an NFT to, say, attend an event?
It's super easy, actually. The initial setup for anyone not used to like having any cryptocurrency might be a little bit of a hill to climb, but once you get over that hill and you understand how it works, it's really easy. So I have a wallet address where all of my NFTs live, and I've put them up on a marketplace. And if you want to buy one of them, you just go to, just like any other kind of e-commerce store, you go to the purchase page, you press the purchase button, you send Ether to the wallet address, and then it's automatically sent to your same wallet where you sent the money from. And then it's associated with your account from there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Super
so
easy.
just for fun, let's assume I have a wallet, and I have a couple of different wallets. So I'm already in digital currency space. But if we could talk somebody through the first step of going, where do I find out what a wallet is and how do I get into the digital space? What would be Mike and UV's advice on where to start from scratch?
Arcane is a good website. I think it's arcane.technology. I might be wrong about the last part, but just do a Google search for Arcane wallet. And what they do is help you start your wallet, and then you can use a credit card to purchase any cryptocurrencies out there. And then once your cryptocurrency is in the wallet, the transaction's complete, you can do whatever you want with it. You can buy goods, services, you can invest in NFTs, anything you want.
Yeah. And then another way to go about it would be to get an account at an exchange. And so for Canadians, BitBuy is a good exchange. Kraken also accepts Canadian bank accounts. I think those are probably the best two. I know Binance has recently got integration with Canadian accounts, but their kind of verification process is a bit longer and more complicated.
I just wanted to touch on the physicality of these platforms is no different than, say, the physicality of a bank. That's how I interpret it. Like walking into a Kraken, and I say walking obviously digitally, but opening a Kraken account or a BitBuy is the same as opening a bank account. And you go through, just like at a bank, they validate who you are. You have to show ID. It's the same process of opening a bank account as opening an account with one of these platforms, and then they give you a wallet.
It's true. And there are also other options if you want to go with decentralized exchanges, because really the benefit with the exchanges is liquidity. If you want to sell or buy into a cryptocurrency, it's fast, it's easy, it's
there's lots of
instant
volume available.
Yeah, but then you're also, because these exchanges are centralized, and the Canadian government has got their hands in everyone's pockets in these exchanges. So you will be taxed on it, and it's very transparent for the government to see. So we're getting into gray area here, but there are decentralized exchanges.
I think it's important to understand that there is some mechanisms of safety and security in the system. And in Canada in particular, we're a little bit conservative. So yes, some of those exchanges are influenced by policy. What would be an example of a decentralized system?
We haven't really played around with them much. We just are aware of them, but you could definitely look that up, just decentralized exchange.
And one of the things that I know I've heard people externally talk about who are maybe a little bit resistant to getting into crypto is there's the technical understanding, but there's also the question, how do I buy my groceries or pay my rent with cryptocurrency? What's your first take on a response to functioning in society, but with the crypto?
We actually lived on crypto for about 2 years, maybe longer. And what we had to do was buy and sell cash using cryptocurrency. So there are different websites. You can look for people that want to buy into cryptocurrency and they'll show up and give you cash and you make the transaction right there. So that's one way. Going through the legitimate route with exchanges that deposit money into your bank is another way. As far as buying goods, we're in this weird transitionary period with cryptocurrency where we're moving from this very slow, expensive, cumbersome, environmentally not very friendly model of validating the transactions into a new model where suddenly everything's going to be a lot faster, a lot cheaper, and it won't have the energy consumption that, say, Bitcoin does. Bitcoin's probably never going to change. So Bitcoin is basically never going to be valid for daily use, ever.
That's not what it's designed for anyway.
Yeah, it's more of a store of value. So just like you would have a brick of gold that you invest in gold, you're not going to go to the supermarket and shave off a chunk of your gold brick and give it to this teller. So it's the same thing. It's expensive to move it and time consuming, and it's a problem. So there are new cryptocurrencies coming along. The second most popular cryptocurrency, Ethereum, is moving to a different model, which will make it a lot more viable for day-to-day transactions. And that's coming within months. We're going to see a bit of a revolution this year in cryptocurrencies.
I want to tap into your future thinking on that. But I just want to summarize that for the average person, understanding the difference between a digital currency that is an asset and then a digital currency that is more of a medium of exchange. And be mindful of that as you're looking at your options. I would love to just harness both of your ideas on what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years in the currency space and what's going to get left behind.
I love this question. We've been fortunate enough with the podcast to be at the center of a lot of this kind of conversation about innovation with cryptocurrencies. If you want to check out some of those episodes, I'd recommend the one we did with Vince Means. We interviewed Vitalik Buterin, who is the founder of Ethereum, who is impossible to get now. We got him early on. I think there's a lot of things that are not really fully understood about cryptocurrency that go beyond money. Cryptocurrency is programmable and it can be used to organize decentralized groups of people to make collective decisions and invest in certain projects. And there's this term called a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. It's a collection of people that don't necessarily have to know each other who can make collective decisions on what to do with pools of money. And so they can invest in projects and they can invest in social good kind of projects, all kinds of things. And so there are mechanisms for them to come to a consensus that don't necessarily exist in our political landscape or in any of our voting systems. There's a whole lot of innovation happening when it comes to governance and decentralized decision-making that is going to be totally revolutionary. And I imagine within the next 5 years, the vast majority of people will be participating in some form or another in a DAO and deciding on how funds are pooled and spent. It would be like the government just suddenly gave you voting power over what to do with tax dollars.
Yes.
It's a pretty interesting possibility for revolution in grassroots organization.
And it doesn't just have to do with managing money. DAOs can manage all sorts of things. They can manage non-monetary decisions. For example, you could decide, do we want a bridge built here, or is it going to cause too much environmental disruption? Maybe we should build it over here. And then you're able to take decisions from all the people who care about the subject and weigh them in different ways and have different people have more decision-making power or less depending on their level of expertise, for example. So there's different ways that DAOs can function outside of just financial stuff.
And you can delegate your decision-making, your voting power too. So say I have a friend who is an expert in road building. I don't know anything about that. So I want to transfer my road building tokens to him so that he has more power to vote.
Right. You've been at the forefront of this future thinking for a long time. And I describe it as deceptive, meaning there's talk and then a few things make a headline. The early adopters in digital currencies have got 10 years experience under their belt now. It's becoming more mainstream. But I actually think the volume of deception has not yet been realized. I think the decentralization of decision-making and economies are not very far away. You need to be aware of it, or you're going to be disrupted. You need to be part of the disruption, or you're going to be disrupted. So from your perspective, we've talked about things like NFTs, cryptocurrencies, seed tokens, and functioning for fundraising and trading and asset collection, decentralized autonomous organizations. What advice would you give to anybody who's in business today as an entrepreneur, even in a small business, to say, you need to be aware of these three things and you need to take these three actions?
For businesses, there's not a ton I can think of aside from just accept cryptocurrency. Do some research on which cryptocurrencies you can accept and be quick about liquidating that cryptocurrency. If you sell a product, liquidate it pretty quickly, because cryptocurrencies fluctuate so much, so quickly.
Right.
So, what you sold for $5 could be worth 10 cents within a 24-hour period. And then you still have to deliver your product. And by the time it gets to them, you've lost a lot of money. So be fast when you're accepting cryptocurrency and liquidating it, unless you're tolerant to the risk of it going up or down. There's another sort of opportunity here where you could potentially decentralize your company and give your community a bit of a say in how things are operated and the ownership of it. If you're already a well-established business, there's not a whole lot of incentive really to do that. But for new businesses starting up, I think decentralized organizations are going to have an insane competitive advantage. And just because of the mass collective intelligence and coordination that is possible through those mechanisms, as opposed to this top-down command control, CEO dictates everything and that sort of thing. It's decentralized organizations are a lot more agile. The other thing that I think is useful for people is, well, maybe not useful, but something I care deeply about is political action when it comes to how cryptocurrencies are interpreted by governments. Governments are getting greedy when it comes to cryptocurrencies and recognizing this opportunity being lost and wanting to, grab new tax. Like basically it's a criminal endeavor until it's taxable and suddenly it's okay.
Right.
But they need to be careful about how they interpret cryptocurrencies, because they're not just money. They are voting rights. They're
Memberships.
Membership. They're
Yes.
all kinds of different things. And if you interpret them all with this blanket judgment of it's a currency, you're going to, first of all, you're either going to wreck innovation in your space, which is this massive lost asset if you wreck the innovation. Or secondly, you're going to drive back channels and innovation in secretive technologies and stuff like that. You're going to basically force people to go underground, black markets of cryptocurrencies. And it's so easy to do that it'd be so much better if governments just took a stance of adoption and acceptance and looked at the long game of, we're making our country competitive with other countries by having more people invest in our country, and places like Estonia and what else?
I think didn't El Salvador just come out and say they're accepting Bitcoin, right?
That's the right approach, because you're going to attract innovation and entrepreneurship and money from all over the globe if you do that, rather than take this just short-term greedy perspective on it.
And I think part of it is just ignorance. They don't understand the difference between all the different currencies. Like it's not just money or assets. There's 1,000 different things that it could be. It's just programmable digital objects. Just think of it as programmable digital objects. So they could be so many different things. And if they just hired one consultant to help them form this policy, it would make things a lot better.
It could be disastrous in so many different ways.
Well, and I'm going to say there's lots of coaches out there that are specialists in this field that help people get from, where we are today to where we need to be in short periods of time. One question I have for you, and I'll direct it to you, Yuvi. What do you think is, you said ignorance, but is there any other barriers from your perception and the work and the conversations that you've had that we need to be aware of, that we can overcome in order to allow the future to unfold?
Kind of backing up and being a little more general, people need to stop reading headlines and start actually trying to understand. And it follows from my previous statement. People just see headlines like, oh, Bitcoin is bad for the environment. And they just like, okay, no more information needed. La, 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 la. And then people have messaged us and said, oh, I heard that NFTs are bad for the environment, but they haven't investigated any further. And it actually prevents innovation, and it prevents these amazing new technologies from being adopted because there's suddenly this huge resistance to them. Ethereum, for example, is the main platform for NFTs. They're planning to move to a different consensus algorithm this year. And so currently it's under proof of work, which uses a lot of computation power, produces a lot of heat, and needs a lot of energy to run. But they're switching over to proof of stake, which means the transactions are not going to be validated by these huge mining farms that have a ton of video cards running in a freezer and using a lot of energy. It's just going to be
Cell phones
and laptops. So the energy consumption is going to go down by 99.9%. And it's coming. It's already planned.
Is there anything else, and I'd love to share with the global audience of entrepreneurs listening?
I would just be really happy if people came away from this conversation with a lot of light bulb moments about what is possible if you can program money, if you can decentralize money, if you can represent the trading of physical goods in NFTs. What is possible with the sharing economy and with new economies that are coming up now? There's a light bulb moment for me, and I think we even have it on record when we were talking to Vince Means in the podcast episode that we did with him, where he was talking about tokenizing trees and having this ability to invest in environmental projects and have a return on investment from it. Yeah, there's like a lot of possibility that people are just starting to realize now.
You asked like what sort of things would entrepreneurs would want to learn about that would be beneficial. I think actually most immediately, DAOs I think are a little bit further into the future, but NFTs are very immediate. The technology is already there. It already exists. The platforms are quite user-friendly. Maybe people who are really bad with computers would struggle. On average, millennial, I think, would be completely fine. Yeah, you don't need programming experience to make NFTs. So
maybe we leave everybody with the challenge of developing their first NFT.
Yeah, go
that
flood
would be
the
a great
market.
challenge. That would be a great challenge. I wanted to close off today's podcast with some understanding that today was intentionally getting people primed to get into the cryptocurrency market using some easy access tools. So Mike, Yuvi, thank you for joining us today. Futurethinkers.org, is that the best way to get a hold of you post podcast today?
Yeah, that's right. And if you want to check out the seed project that we're doing, the Village project, you can just add NFT to the end of it. If you want to check out the Village, just add Village to the end of it.
Yeah,
futurethinkers.org/village.
/village or /NFT.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.